Hi, my name is Judith and this is Game On's Lesson 7 on Waste and Pollution. First, let's talk about waste and waste management in general. Waste management is the collection, transport, processing, recycling and disposal of waste. This is very necessary, as otherwise it will end up polluting natural environments like our oceans and soils. At the same time, it requires money, which is the reason why still today in low-income countries over 90% of waste is mismanaged. And have in mind that we need to tackle this problem urgently. The World Bank predicts that global waste will increase by 70% until 2050. Going into the different kinds of waste. On the one hand, there is solid waste, the one we usually imagine when talking about the topic. It refers to solid garbage that is discarded by the public. The first type of solid waste is mining waste, for example, rock, soil and tailings. All of these are materials produced by mining activities and often cannot be used for other purposes, or are simply not needed in these quantities. Secondly, there is industrial waste. This encompasses different types of scraps from manufacturing processes. It also includes the waste of the construction industry, which is a huge problem. Industrial waste can pile up to huge amounts of mixed material waste, which is difficult to recycle. Next, we have agricultural waste. It contains manure and other wastes from farms, poultry houses and slaughterhouses, harvest waste and so on. It is not only solid though. There is also fertilizer runoff from fields, pesticides that enter into water, aerosols, and salt and silt drained from the fields. In many parts of the world, it is common practice to set fire to cultivated fields after the harvest, to clear leftover stubble, weeds and waste before sowing a new crop. This is a highly unsustainable practice though. Short term it seems to be beneficial to the farmers, as many nutrients are being released upon burning. However, in the long term, the organic matter of the soil is being destroyed, making it unfertile. At the same time, it is the biggest source of black carbon pollution in the air. It's important to find the right waste management method. Many types of agricultural waste can be used as economically productive resources. Agricultural slurry, for example, can be converted to fertilizer, or manure can be used to produce biogas. Other types of waste, on the other hand, can be dangerous, such as animal carcasses, and should be managed accordingly. Then we have municipal solid waste. It consists of waste from households, enterprises and other institutions. With proper waste segregation programs, a significant portion of this could be collected separately as biowaste and recyclable materials, so that a huge amount of energy and materials are saved. Glass, paper, metal and plastic can be recycled, and biowaste can be composted and turned into valuable humus to fertilize the soil. In landfills, which we will come back to later, biowaste can't break down properly, and it creates methane, a greenhouse gas. Biowaste refers to biodegradable garden and park waste, food and kitchen waste, and comparable waste from food processing plants. As already mentioned, biowaste doesn't have to be wasted. It can be managed as a resource. The first type of biowaste is green waste, leaves, branches, grass cuttings, etc. from gardens and parks. The second type is kitchen waste, such as fruit and vegetable scraps, peelings, eggshells, and other biodegradable waste from the household. While solid and liquid wastes pose a big threat to nature, hazardous waste is especially dangerous to humans and the environment. Hazardous waste refers to radioactive, pathological, and other toxic wastes that require handling precaution. Let's first address radioactive, or nuclear, waste. It is a byproduct from nuclear reactors, fuel processing plants, hospitals, and research facilities. Of course, a big amount can also arise when nuclear power plants are being taken down. Especially dangerous are high-level nuclear wastes. Tiny dosages can already affect human health if they get into our food chain. This could happen through contaminated water, for instance. Secondly, liquid waste from industrial areas can often be considered hazardous waste as well. Toxic and other hazardous materials in the water distinguish industrial from domestic liquid wastewater. It is important here to mention the mining industry, because mine waste, heavy materials, and acidic water often end up in streams and rivers. Medical waste, as the name suggests, usually originates from healthcare facilities, such as hospitals, physicians' offices, dental practices, blood banks, and veterinary hospitals or clinics, as well as in medical research facilities and laboratories. They are especially dangerous due to their initial purpose, which is often to change biochemistry in human bodies. Needless to say, medical waste can also include contaminated materials. Now that we have covered the different forms of waste, let's address possible impacts. Ecosystems worldwide are affected by it, not only because of changes in water and soil chemistry, but also as animals get caught up in plastic waste or mistake it for food. Mismanaged waste disposal also leads to increased emissions of greenhouse gases, further exacerbating the climate crisis. But not only nature is a victim of human waste. If not burned or recycled, waste is being shipped to developing countries, so that it is out of sight for the global north. This, however, often results in long-term health problems and cancer due to illegal burning of waste, releasing toxic chemicals and heavy metals. In the developing countries, of course. So, what is actually to be done with all this waste we are producing, in light of the trouble we are having with its impacts? There are different options, which are more or less environmentally friendly. First of all, we have to deal with municipal solid waste. The oldest and, in a way, most simple option is a landfill, a site for dumping waste materials. Landfills are taking up space locally, though, and can have negative effects on groundwater as well. Secondly, there is mechanical biological treatment, or MBT. It is a pre-treatment technology which employs techniques that combine biological treatment, in other words, composting and anaerobic digestion, with mechanical treating. Thermal treatment is yet another waste treatment technology. It involves the use of high temperatures for the combustion of waste materials. Lastly, the most environmentally friendly and scalable solution is recycling. In order to recycle materials, they have to be sorted though, and this involves a lot of structural conditions, such as separate waste disposal and proper awareness in society. Moreover, there are limits to recycling. In plastic, the polymers that make up the different types of plastic become cross-contaminated when combined, and they can absorb small amounts of the material they contain. So, recycling a plastic product can often be done only 1 or 2 times. This problem, however, is currently in the center of countless researches to increase the number of usage. We can, for example, add stabilizers, but nevertheless, the quality of the recycled product decreases with every recycling process. For paper, every time it is recycled, the fibers shorten. Thus, it is estimated that paper can be recycled 4 to 6 times. Aluminium, steel, and glass, in contrast, lose no quality during recycling, and therefore can, theoretically, be recycled endlessly. Unfortunately, this takes a lot of energy, making the advantage to the environment a debatable issue. As to biowaste, to convert this precious material into usable earth, it must be processed by microorganisms. Small animals, like earthworms, help accelerate the process. A lot of the hazardous waste we produce is too dangerous to be recycled, especially the nuclear kind. Thus, this waste is put into permanent repositories, mostly in old mines underground, so as to not damage humans or the environment. Other hazardous waste, like electric equipment and batteries, can be recycled using advanced technologies. Sadly, this is not always the case. Especially with electric devices, it all too often ends up in poor regions of Africa, being recycled by hand, threatening the health of the local population. In general, there is a conceptual problem with our whole consumption system. We use energy and resources to produce something which, in time, ends up in the trash. Therefore, we need to rethink our whole economy. We need to create a circular economy. This includes recycling materials, indeed, but it's also important to look out for products made out of those recycled materials, instead of virgin materials, so to encourage the circular process. We need to change our daily habits, use less and move away from consumerism. If we no longer need an item, instead of throwing it out, we could sell or donate it. If we need something, instead of buying it new, we could first try to buy a used one version of the product we need. Probably everybody has heard the phrase reduce, reuse and recycle in this context. But a lot more can be done to make sustainable choices. The 6 R's of sustainability are: rethink, be mindful of your consumption; reduce, quite obvious, reduce consumption of energy and materials; refuse, don't consume what you don't need to. Do you want a bag with your products? No thank you, I've brought my own. Reuse, find new uses for old objects. Repair, fix or upgrade your objects rather than throwing them away. And recycle, manage your waste properly. You can even add a 7th R, rot, as to remember to compost your biodegradable waste. Other types of waste can usually be taken to recycling centers, waste yards, where they should be recycled or managed in the best way possible. When in doubt, always ask and research so as to manage your waste properly and have the smallest impact on the environment. Besides that, we can also endeavor to produce less waste from our everyday habits. When buying groceries, package-free shops are a great option, and also local markets to find fresh vegetables and fruits. A lot of cosmetics and cleaning products can also be bought in reusable packaging or without any packaging at all. It's important to mention that these are not available for everyone, nor everywhere. But if they are a much more sustainable choice. Finally, a quick walkthrough on composting, the process by which organic materials are deliberately decomposed in a controlled fashion to produce a material that can be used to return nutrients to the soil. There are many ways in which composting can be practiced, be it outdoors or indoors. The bokashi method, for example, involves layering kitchen scraps with a bokashi inoculant in a special bucket. It requires only about 10 days to convert organic matter into usable material. Vermicompost, on the other hand, uses various species of worms, usually red wigglers, white worms, and other earthworms. We also have simple on-site composting, which is when pretty much all organic scraps and refuse, except for meat products, are heaped together and allowed to decompose. The recipe for traditional composting is a mixture of green materials that are high in nitrogen and brown materials that are high in carbon, along with air and water. Greens are typically food scraps, like fruit and vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, or if you have a yard, grass clippings. Browns are more carbon rich. Think egg cartons, newspapers, dried leaves, and pine needles. The browns are key because they allow water and air to flow. To keep things moving, you'll want to turn or rotate the pile, perhaps with a stick or spade. It's going to take about 6 months to a year for every component to decompose. If you don't have a backyard and don't want to compost indoors, there are other options for you. You can ask your neighbors or look out for local Facebook groups if they have a compost pile. You can also research if there is a nearby community garden where they usually compost as well. There are also websites such as sharewaste.com where people who have compost piles and people who have kitchen scraps can find each other. If you're interested in the topic, have a look at our section of recommended videos, where we have included one that teaches you 6 easy ways to compost.